Your Creative Push, episode 59.
Just, you never know what's going to come of it, but if you have the urge to be creative, reward yourself and go do it.
Welcome to Your Creative Push, the podcast that pushes you to pursue your creative passions. I'm your host, Youngmin Brown, and my guest today is Beau Belanger. Beau is a television writer who got his start and first two scripts on the Disney Channel's hit show Good Luck Charlie. His next writing job came on the Netflix original Richie Rich, a sitcom remake of the classic comic book. In between those jobs, he's raised $12,000 on Kickstarter to promote his own animated show, Pearly Gates, which was released in February 2015. Beau graduated from Fairfield University in 2006 and was born and raised in Portland, Maine. Beau, thanks for coming on the show today, and I was wondering if you could tell me what I missed and maybe tell us a little bit about your personal life.
Yeah, sure. So I born and raised in Portland, Maine. I went to school in Connecticut at Fairfield University, a small Jesuit school, and I had done a few internships in college, but really had no idea what I wanted to do after school. Actually had a conversation with my parents after graduation, like, well, what do you want to do now? Which is kind of crazy, and I had an inkling that I wanted to do something creative, but didn't really know what that was. And I ended up getting a great job at a technology research company in Cambridge, Mass, called Forrester Research. And it just, a great job. I enjoyed it. It really worked with really smart people. But just was kind of started writing on my own on the side, kind of like at night. Just had a notebook, would make lists of funny things or characters, or I didn't really know what I was writing, but I was doing it every night kind of in secret. No one knew about it. But 6 months after college, I convinced my buddy, Matt Lynch, who I went to school with, who kind of was equally not real smitten with life after college in the real world. So to, give this writing thing a go. And the idea was, hey, let's, I sent him a clip of the Farrelly brothers giving a great commencement speech. People can find it on YouTube, but it's a really great speech. It's really inspirational. And the general idea of their speech is listen, we were just a couple of idiots who moved out to LA. Had people had higher expectations for us in life, we probably wouldn't have gone out there and had nothing to lose. But we just did it. And so I convinced my buddy Matt to do that. The idea was to write features. The one guy we knew in Boston, worked for Boston Magazine, was New York and LA are really expensive. You guys have never written anything before. Why don't you actually, if you stay in Boston, you probably won't do it. So why don't you move to a random city and just start writing to see if you like it? And we were like, yeah, sure. So we made a list of cities that would be cool to live in and got it down to Denver, Dallas, and Charlotte. Dallas seemed too hot, and Denver, I was afraid my buddy Matt was going to ski too much in Denver. So we chose Charlotte, and I don't know if he knows that, if he listens to this. Sorry, buddy. But so we moved to Charlotte, just waiting tables, and started writing. Did a feature. We actually did a pilot too. That pilot won a competition, Larry Brody's pilot competition, which I don't know if it's still around. But we got in retrospect, probably too much false confidence, thinking we were going to conquer LA in 2 minutes because we won that contest. But anyway, after 9 months, we moved out to LA. Quickly realized we were in this massive ocean. Before, Charlotte was this tiny pond, and things got real pretty fast for us. Realizing how tough this was going to be. We were waiting tables out here, but I got laid off. We moved out right around when Obama came into office, a little bit before that. So right around when Lehman Brothers collapsed, and so I was out of a job and I didn't have that much savings. We were writing a ton, and I was I'm going to get a job in TV. I'm already out here. Looking back on it, it's one of those things that I was a nervous wreck at the time, but it was a blessing in disguise because it forced me to get a job in TV, and that's what it's all about. So it was a tough 6 months. Maybe a little bit more than that, but ramen noodles was the highlight meal of the day, which is pretty sad. Peanut butter sandwiches. Looking for a job, and just worked all the connections I had. I didn't really have any, or not many. Fairfield, most of the connections kind of stay in the Northeast, but was fortunate to get put in touch with a guy who was going to be the assistant director on this new Disney Channel pilot called Oops. I got Sean Mulcahy. He was a nice guy. Hired me to be a set PA, which is basically just the gopher on the set. You go and get the actors when they're ready to, when they're ready for them on on the stage. And I made up little cards that said like Bo Belanger writer, and went up to the writers and like introduced myself and said, if this show goes, I would love to help you guys out because I want to be a writer. And then from there, it was just like it was a series of kind of lucky things. 6 months later, the show got picked up. They renamed it to Good Luck Charlie. The showrunners remembered me. They hired me to be the executive producer's assistant. And then one of the writer's assistants left after the first season. So I got to go into the writer's room in season 2 and be a writer's assistant. And to basically I don't know if your listeners know, but like in the TV world, the writer's assistant is like the recorder. So you have the writers sitting around a conference table or like on couches, and the writer assistant just types. It's business school to be a TV writer. Like it's a great way to learn the TV business. You get the rhythms of the room, just what it's all about. And yeah, you kind of learn through osmosis, and it was a great thing. I got a couple of scripts, and after that show ended, I made Pearly Gates, or started the Pearly Gates project. And then about a year after Good Luck Charlie ended, I got hired on Richie Rich as a staff writer, and that was originally supposed to be a show for YouTube, but Netflix ended up buying it. So yeah, that's kind of from the beginning of my creative pursuits, which is when I was just writing in a notebook by myself in Boston, to the staff writing job. That was 2007 to 14. That was about a 7-year period.
At what point did you kind of start to do this new thing with Pearly Gates? Were you doing that like during the job, in between the jobs, or like where did you find the time to kind of do that?
I knew I was going to have time. I just had a feeling I was going to be out of work for a little bit after Good Luck Charlie, and I wanted to just make something because I'd been writing, and which is fun, but after a while you want to like actually see your work like living, and so people can kind of see it or whatnot. So right. I like this idea that Pearly Gates is basically, the idea is it follows Jesus, MLK, and Columbus, and the idea is that what's the point in being good once you already make it to heaven? You've done the hard work, you've lived a good life, you've gotten to heaven, so now everyone's inner asshole can kind of come out. So it's basically everyone's worst version of themselves up there. So it was a lot of fun, very silly. Being on a kids show at the Disney Channel, it was fun to kind of just do something completely irreverent and off the wall. So I liked the idea, and it just felt like I had second animated thing I ever written. I wasn't necessarily an animation guy, but wanted to give it a try. And it started with Kickstarter. Actually, it started with my own money. I made 3 character intro videos, 2-minute videos for each character, kind of introducing them in the world. And then hired storyboarders, animators off a freelance website called Elance, which is a great website for any of your listeners who are thinking of doing something creative, and because there's really talented people all throughout the whole world. And I ended up working with a storyboard artist, an animator, initially just right in LA, and she helped me with those first videos, and I used those to raise money on Kickstarter, with the idea of making like a mini first season. We ended up doing 4. I raised more than my goal. Initially, I was just going to do 3 episodes, about 7 or 8 minutes long each, and raise more money. So I did a 4th episode, and it was incredibly rewarding. And, you learn so much from doing, because I was not just writing now, but I was producing, working with, all, the voice. I had to hire all the voiceover actors. And for the mini first season, I was working with an animation team in India who are just super talented. And yeah, it was a great experience.
Yeah, it's a beautiful show, but it's hilarious too. Like I watched a bit of it, and it's it's funny knowing that you work on a children's show, because it is like the antithesis of a children's show, which is pretty cool.
Yeah, exactly. And it was nothing. That wasn't like a conscious decision. I think it was just like probably like those Disney animators back in the day who, there's always those, I forget the exact ones, but like a Lion, like the right. sexual stuff that pops in. Yeah, exactly. So it was just like a subconscious thing. I think I just that's kind of just what I wrote, and that's the idea I was most excited about, and felt like that. I knew, it was going to be. I didn't know it would be as much work as it ended up being, but I knew it was going to be a lot of work.
Mm-hmm.
So I just wanted to go with the idea that really excited me, and so it was one of those things. You gotta, in this day and age, it's really hard to. Well, let me back up. I think there's two ways of kind of making your way through the, and I don't know if this is how much of interest this is to your listeners, but there's two ways of making your way through the Hollywood ranks. As far as a writer, you can kind of go the traditional route, work your way up, keep writing new pilots, get on a show, and slowly move your way up the ranks. Or what seems like is more common is, Broad City, Lena Dunham with her tiny furniture, like workaholics, they make their own stuff. People see it, it's popular, and all of a sudden they're showrunners. They're running their own show. So it's one of those things when you're a young guy trying to navigate Hollywood, you can, keep going the traditional ranks, but you look over and you see people taking kind of swinging for the fences with their own projects, and you're like, oh, I got to do that. And that was really a big reason I did it too, was just to try to be like, okay, screw it, I'm going to take a swing here and see what happens.
Well, and the other thing that I like about that second method that you mentioned is the fact that at the end of it, like, you have created something, you've gotten something off of your chest, and you have like something tangible that you have put into existence. And with the first route, you aren't necessarily able to do that, or at least do something that can be defined as yours and yours alone, which I really like.
Exactly. And I've never met anybody out here who, and it's a pretty jaded town, but just because it's so competitive and, people take their lumps, but no one ever dissuades anybody from making their own stuff. I mean, that's always just like, do it. It can't hurt. If you have the resources and the time, just make stuff. And I feel like, as the under 30 crowd, it's just in their blood. Whereas if you went and talked to a seasoned comedy writer, they probably have a lot of their connections and they're less likely to just make stuff. And I feel like if for this younger generation, it's almost like who grew up with YouTube, and now that it's so much easier to shoot things, it's kind of in people's blood. And I feel like that's kind of the way the development's going. And plus you learn a ton of stuff. I got to produce and I got to direct. And so there's so many upsides to making stuff. If you can just make whatever you can, however small it is, and you kind of begin to build a portfolio, and you never know where that takes you.
Absolutely. And before, you mentioned that it was kind of like a private hobby for you, like when you were first starting out, and like you write down ideas and you don't necessarily share them with people. Do you have a lot of other things that you have like written down, like projects that are in your head that you haven't quite gotten the time to create yourself?
Yeah, for sure. I have a list of all my scripts, that the ones that have been aborted and the ones that I've seen through all the way to show like agents and fellow, other writers and stuff. And you have ideas sometimes that don't make it, but I always have a list of things. I have a notes thing on my phone that I'm always, because you always want to observe stuff, and the more you write down, the more it kind of takes on a life of its own. And so I'm always writing stuff down, and I feel like the busier I am writing, last year especially, I wasn't working, so I was like, screw it, I'm just going to write a ton of pilots. I ended up writing 6. And the more I wrote, just the more stuff came to me. You just get into, like I wasn't even concerned about what the next pilot idea was going to be. I just kind of trusted that something would come along, and I was just in such a good zone writing that, like, you finish another pilot and sure enough, like, something that you're excited about comes along. And so I think there is something to that. Just putting in the time, if you enjoy it, because it's my favorite part of the day. I love the first 4 hours where I just go and write in the morning. Yeah, just kind of keep track of your thoughts and kind of follow the ones that you're really excited about. But there are definitely ones that sit there and think, they just kind of fizzle out. Maybe you were a little bit more excited about them when they first popped into your head and they don't have quite a good legs.
I have that same thing. I have the notepad where I just write down ideas, and that thing is very extensive at this point. And sometimes I go back and I write down like the most random idea ever, and I have no idea what I was thinking about.
Yeah, it happens to me too. Like I'll need like a character idea, and I'll go back and look at them and be like, oh god, that would not be good. Yeah, it's funny how some things hold up and some things just don't. But
Or like sometimes I'll write even just like a dialogue, like something that a character would say like right before they murder somebody else or something like
Right.
that. And
Right.
I'm like, God, if my phone ever got stolen and somebody read this, they would think I'm some sort of psychopath.
Yeah,
Um,
you'd be up on you'd be a suspect on a few charges probably.
Absolutely. But I think a lot of people have that, whether they write the idea down or not, they have a lot of different ideas floating around in their head. And for me as well, it can get overwhelming when you have such an extensive list of ideas and you don't even know which one to pick. What advice would you give to me or to somebody listening who does have that kind of a situation where it's like, all right, like which one do I pick? Do I put them on like some big board and spin a spinner and see which one it lands on? Like,
That would
how
be
do you kind of
that could be fun.
wheel of crappy ideas?
Yeah, no, see, don't call them crappy. They're
Yeah.
trust them. So when you say pick, do you mean like what ideas you'd follow?
Yeah, because
Okay.
especially for like what you do, because you're talking about pilots, you're talking about like an actual like extensive something that will take a lot of time to do. So a lot of the people listening don't have that much time, and
Yeah.
it's like, how do you pick, which one to spend your time on, especially if it might end up being, thrown away or being not something that you actually fully produce, but kind of something that at the very least you learn from, but doesn't end up being like a finalized product.
Yeah. Well, I think knowing your outlet or what form you want the idea to take is really important. So if you're thinking about doing some stand up and you have ideas for bits, then you can kind of keep track of those in a separate place, and maybe those take a little bit less time to develop, obviously, than like a pilot. So I think you're just knowing which ideas, what you want to do first of all. Like, what's your goal? Do you want to write TV scripts? Do you want to write short stories on Kindle? Do you want to do stand up? And what if once you have that focused in, and you can do multiple things, but once you figure out, okay, for this month or a couple of months, I want to work on this. I think just narrowing your focus and figuring out, say you want to do stand up, it's like, all right, what bits am I most excited about? Kind of can work those through, and I think people would be surprised because not everyone, like you said, has the luxury of time, but there are many Hollywood writers who have got their career started because they were like frustrated lawyers and were getting up at like 4:30 to 6:30 before work just to like get it out.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're really, if it's burning in you and you want to like express ideas, I think you'll find the time to. And though even if it's you can't do 4 hours a day, if two is better than nothing, or even an hour and a half, just making the time and yeah, I would just follow ideas that make you the most excited, because I think it's going to be a lot of work. So you obviously you need that excitement to kind of to drive you.
So it's more of not necessarily picking the easiest idea or the thing that you think will be able to kind of be finalized the easiest. It's more of like the idea that, I don't know, makes your heart flutter or
Yeah.
something more manly than
Yeah.
that.
You want to complete whatever you do. That's
Mhm.
important. So if your idea is a movie idea that you actually want to film and produce versus the short, you have these two ideas. One's a short, one's a film. And you could say maybe the level of excitement is sort of even on each of them. I would definitely choose the short because it's your first time, and it's just you want to finish stuff. So
Mhm.
give yourself a leg up. Actually being able to finance a feature length film and write it and all that stuff is going to be a huge task. So yeah, no, I think there's definitely something to early on just kind of getting some stuff done and just kind of seeing some maybe some smaller projects through. But that being said, I wouldn't necessarily just choose whatever the easiest thing to get done is, because you want to continue to challenge yourself and hone your instincts on what you want to where you want to put your energy. So yeah, I think as time goes on, maybe you can kind of build out and take on bigger projects.
Cool. As you said before, that you spend like your favorite time is the 4 hours where you're just writing. How else do you balance your time? Like, what does your typical day look like doing the work and just living your life as well?
Yeah, I mean, early on when I was talking about our first few years out in LA, me and my buddy Matt. I mean, I looking back on it, kind of was probably pushing us too hard, because it really is important to have a life obviously outside of your craft, and because that's where all the ideas come from and stuff. So doing it 7 days a week probably is not healthy.
Mm-hmm.
So you gotta have experiences. You gotta live your life. If that means taking the whole weekend off, great, go do fun stuff. But yeah, I always the most important. My family sometimes would get bummed out at me when I'm home because I'll go just for even maybe a shorter time of 2 hours in the morning, even when we're on vacation, if I'm trying to finish something, and just go do that in the morning because it's just like kind of like why a lot of people work out in the morning. It's just like you get the bad, not the bad stuff, but you get the stuff you can enjoy. I can enjoy the rest of the day if I know I've done my writing.
Mm-hmm.
And like I said, I love the writing itself, but I like getting it out of the way. So that for me, if I can go do that, the rest of the day is kind of gravy. And then, it's just about, reading new stuff. And, obviously there's a ton of stuff to watch nowadays. So trying to consume stuff and feed the writing side. And, like I said, having a personal life and just trying to be as happy as you can because the creative pursuit can be tough. So that life balance is really important.
For sure. Do you ever have writer's block, or do you have anything else that kind of holds you back while you are trying to put those hours in with the writing?
No, I've been pretty fortunate. I think just if you sit down and I've had scripts in the past where like I get a note and from like a writer on Good Luck Charlie say about one of a pilot I've written, and I just didn't sound right, and I was trying to work it through, and I would spend weeks just like, I don't know if it doesn't seem right to do it the way he's talking about. I want to do it this way, and you kind of begin to trust yourself a little bit more, and it never gets easy, but it gets kind of easier,
Mm-hmm.
and I feel like if you do like last year when I was really committed to writing those pilots, you just get into a really good kind of flow through from day to day. And I feel like you're less likely to get writer's block if you're writing more consistently.
Yeah, once it's like a habit, it's like your brain is just like geared up and ready to go, like you said, every morning to, get it out of the way.
Yeah. And the other thing is be open to the fact that sometimes you're going to sit down and, something might not be like the most productive of day. Not every day you're going to have like breakthroughs. It rarely kind of happens like that anyway. It's more of just kind of make incremental improvements and stuff. But no, you just certainly sit down some days and for whatever reason your head's not in it or it's not coming. But I don't know. I never really classify it as a writer's block. It's just, to me, it's part of the process. You just try to find your time every day and enjoy it.
Absolutely. Adam Gaines was on the show, and I had asked him for people who are doing some type of other art that aren't looking to move to Hollywood to become a screenwriter, like what they could do to kind of educate themselves on how to write scripts and screenplays. Because I've dabbled in it as well. It's a different art form. It's a different way of writing, and you have to think in a much different way. Now, say somebody took his advice and started to write their own thing. What's a good way that they could kind of get eyes on it without, getting on a bus and moving to LA as he suggested?
Yeah.
What's a good way that they could, not just so that it doesn't like sit in their on their computer or in their desk drawer, just to kind of try to get it out there?
No, absolutely. And everyone is in a different situation. Not everyone has the luxury to move out to LA and pursue it. Maybe you're taking care of somebody and somebody older in your family, or for whatever reason, you can't go to LA. Fortunately, nowadays, I feel like there's a lot of things you can do remotely. And Adam's right. If you really are serious about it, you got to eventually, if you want to make it your full-time job, you have to come to LA. But for people who aren't here, I think, there's a lot of good competitions. Austin, obviously the Austin Film Festival is a great one, and they have competitions for original, hour pilots, features. The Nichols Fellowship is a very prestigious features competition. Slam Dance is another big one. They do same as Austin, I believe. I think they have hour, and features. And if you just Google top screenwriting competitions, they're usually like $40 or $50 to get your script into. Some of them, I believe Slam Dance will give you, and maybe Austin as well, they'll give you feedback on your scripts. It's just like a paragraph, but these are legitimate readers. So at least you're getting read by people who know what they're talking about. So yeah, I would start with just kind of some competition. You save up a little money, and if you have a script that you you're excited about and you want people to read, just enter it into a couple competitions and see what happens.
Very cool. Something I forgot to ask you that I wanted to ask you when you were talking about, when you get a note on your screenplay, and I think this can apply for a lot of people listening in different fields, whether you're a writer, an artist, getting a negative comment, or somebody has some kind of remark that you don't necessarily agree with, but like you did, and like spending 3 weeks like trying to work it in or trying to figure it out whether what they're saying is accurate or whether you should do it. How do you kind of figure out where your voice is more important and what you believe is more important, and like figure out if what they're saying is right, or if there's a truth to what they're saying, or how much of a truth there is, and kind of like find that balance?
Yeah, so I have the luxury to have a little bit of a network of writers. So what I typically do, I would send out a first draft of a pilot to some people, and you kind of, once you get feedback from people, you kind of know who are good people to send it to early and who are better people to send it to with later drafts. And what I mean by that is some people can be really critical, be a little ruthless for an early draft, and some people are just more forgiving and more encouraging. So I always try to send early drafts to a couple people I really kind of trust and who are encouraging and constructive, and then I'll get notes from them. And generally, if I say you send it out to like 3 people and I hear the same note a couple of times, then there's probably something there that they're flagging. And oftentimes their solutions aren't necessarily right. So you might have to think of your own solution to what the issue is that they have the script. But yeah, I mean, if multiple people flag kind of the same area, I think it's probably a good rule of thumb to address it in some way. Yeah, and then you can rework stuff and send it out for people listening to this podcast. I think that'll probably be more family and friends who are giving feedback. So, which is good early on, because you want encouraging people. They're not going to be as critical, and maybe they can join some writer groups, just regional writer groups, and just to try to build that network, because you do want feedback with these ideas kind of as you move through drafts. And I think that's important to have that group of people whose opinion you trust, because you can kind of get so in the weeds on these projects creatively that you've lost like the high level vision of what it looks like, so that it's really valuable.
Yeah, absolutely. And like you said, to have people that you can trust on both ends, trust them to not hurt your feelings in the early stages, like to kind of let you down easy or be encouraging, but then also finding that person that will look at it critically and not like tear you down, but that has the knowledge and the ability to be able to give you decent advice.
Yeah, definitely. And like you quickly get a pretty thick skin, like when you're, creative, because, it just, people are going to rewrite your scripts, or, if you're on a staff on a show, like, or even if you're doing it, just with a full-time job and you're doing it as a hobby, like you need to be thick-skinned. I think people will kind of develop that skill naturally. Your feelings probably will get hurt at some point, but just trying to find those people who will kind of, just be constructive early on is really, those people are really special, because they see what you're doing and they try to help you along. Very
cool. It's great advice. Bo, it's time for the final push, and this is where I ask you to reach through the microphone and grab the shoulder of one of the listeners that you've already inspired today and is thinking maybe I could do this too, regardless of what that thing is, and give them your best advice and push them to do it.
It's so much fun to do things that are creative, and it can be such a good outlet. And jobs can be tough, real work can be tough. I think it's really healthy. In fact, my friend Matt, who moved back, I used to write with, he still finds himself going to the coffee shop every weekday during the morning, which is I love it. But it's kind of amazing he's still doing that. But you get into the habit of just being creative. I think he just does it for an hour or maybe an hour and a half in the morning. He's just writing jokes and stuff. But yeah, I think it's a healthy emotional thing to kind of clear out your head, and you never know what's going to come of it. But if you have the urge to be creative, reward yourself and go do it.
Reward yourself. I love that idea. Bo, thank you, man, so much for coming on the show today and for giving us that push.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's a pleasure.
And you can find Bo on his website, bobelanger.com. And there you can find links to all his social media as well as his show, Pearly Gates, which I highly suggest you check out. It will definitely make you laugh. Congratulations on doing that, man. I think it's a really cool project that you did. Congrats on like making the money to be able to do it and then putting in the work to do it. It's really impressive.
Thanks. Absolutely. Yeah. I would recommend people check out episode 2. It seemed to be the consensus favorite.
Which one was that one?
You'll get to see Chris Columbus dressed as a Native American.
Oh, the Columbus. Yeah.
Yeah. No, absolutely. And, like I said, the website's Elance. I think there's one called Odesk. They might have merged, but great freelance websites for all your listeners out there who maybe have an idea for a book, but they want illustrations or whatever the thing is. It's a really cool kind of online market. So definitely check that out too.
Yeah, and on the other end too, if they have time and they want to like use their talents to make a little bit of money,
absolutely,
they can make money that way too. I've checked that out before. Elance is a great resource. Yeah,
for sure.
All right, man. Thank you again for coming on the show.
Yeah, man. Keep good luck. I love what you're doing.
Thanks, brother.
All right, see ya.
Love it. Super happy to have found Bo, and I feel very honored that he came on the show. A really cool perspective from somebody in Hollywood that is kind of going down both paths, the traditional path as he mentioned, and also trying to make it work himself. And like he said, definitely check out Elance if you haven't checked that out before. If you are trying to create a project that you don't know how to do everything involved, or if you have talents to offer and you have a little bit of spare time, if you need ideas for projects to work on, and you just want to make a little bit of cash with your talents, definitely a cool resource to check out. That's all we've got for today. That's all we've got for this week. Hopefully it is enough to get you through the weekend so that you're able to get your work done. We have a great week lined up for you next week. Very excited to pump those episodes out for you. But hopefully you have found yourself in a productive mood this week, and hopefully this podcast has helped you to get there. And if you need the push again next week, we will be here for you. Thank you so much for listening and subscribing. I love you guys and girls, and I hope that this show has been helping you to get your work done. So continue to get it done. Continue to fulfill your passions, continue to create work, and share it out to inspire other people. Have a great weekend, and I will catch you next week. Bye.